Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, July 11th, 2017, and you're tuned in to episode 285 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Our top story of the day starts us off in Massachusetts, where yesterday 6 members of a conference committee of state lawmakers resumed work on merging 2 disparate versions of adult use legalization passed by the state House and Senate in recent weeks and months. The committee has to find a compromise between the 2 versions, which vary widely in terms of details like tax rates and who should have power over the granting of local marijuana industry business licenses. The state Senate's version could be characterized as a repeal and replace piece of legislation, setting the retail tax rate at 28% and giving the power of issuing business licenses to town and municipal boards, whereas the state House version would reserve that power to the voters in a particular area while keeping the tax rate at the 12% as passed by voters in the fall. Yesterday, State Senator William Brownsberger told a reporter from the AP that his committee was, quote, working hard, unquote, as he headed into the meeting. The committee had set themselves a deadline of June 30th to finish up their work, so the pressure is on. In Michigan, marijuana activists say they've collected 100,000 of the more than 250,000 signatures needed to get a marijuana legalization question on the 2018 ballot. The Coalition to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol has a window of 6 months in which to collect enough valid signatures and say they are on target to do it in 4 if they can keep up their current momentum. The ballot question, if approved by voters, would set up a commercial system not dissimilar to Colorado's, with retail dispensaries, cultivation and processing facilities, and testing labs and transportation services. Retail sales would carry a 10% excise tax and a 6% sales tax, with proceeds going to fund schools, infrastructure, and local government. Good luck to everyone working to make that happen. Our final top story of the day swings us all the way out west to California, where Courthouse News has a great piece up about the challenges of merging the formerly illicit network of Humboldt County marijuana cultivators into California's new legal regulated marijuana landscape. As the piece so well lays out, the main difficulty lies with the fact that it's more expensive to grow marijuana for the legal market, and cultivators get a much lower price per pound from legal buyers than if they were to sell to the illicit market. Those numbers have added up to a situation where less than a quarter of Humboldt County's approximately 10,000 marijuana cultivation sites have registered as legal grows. This is a great one to click over for the full read. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com and on our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out on headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, MJ Today Media, publishers of this podcast, our weekly show Marijuana Today, and the MJ Today Media Newsfeed Headlines email newsletter, which hits your inbox every morning with all 50 or so relevant industry headlines, handily organized by state. You can subscribe to the newsfeed over at mjtodaymedia.com/newsfeed. That's mjtodaymedia.com/newsfeed. And if you're someone who could benefit from advertising to the best audience in legal cannabis, then you need to send an email to advertising@mjtodaydaily.com, because our listeners and readers are some of the most engaged consumers of cannabis media around. In fact, we had a rep from MailChimp tell us that our email newsletter open rates, which hover north of 40%, where the industry average is closer to 15%, were the best he'd ever seen by a wide margin. We see the same engagement across the board with listeners of our podcasts. Put your marketing dollars to their best use and sign up as a sponsor today. One last time, just email advertising@mjtodaydaily.com. All right, time for the blitz. California's 4th District Court of Appeals recently ruled that police officers who were caught on security camera eating seized marijuana edibles during a police raid in Santa Ana, California, had no reasonable expectations of privacy, and thus video footage showing them scarfing down the cannabis edibles were admissible in court. The police had disabled most of the shop's security cameras, but missed one, which filmed them eating edibles, playing darts, and joking about kicking a medical marijuana patient with an amputated leg, quote, in the nub, unquote. Colorado's Four Corners Credit Union, which I reported on recently for their efforts to launch a bank specializing in servicing the legal marijuana industry, says they plan to reapply for a Federal Reserve master account, necessary for any bank or credit union to operate as a proper financial institution. Four Corners had previously applied but were turned down, likely because of their planned customer base. Well, this time, Four Corners CEO Deidre O'Gorman said her bank will be stating explicitly that it won't actually serve legal marijuana businesses until it's legal to do so. Instead, they'd work with industry supporters and other legal businesses with an eye on a future when federal prohibition on cannabis business banking is lifted. We'll report back as their application resolves. Marijuana Business Daily's chart of the week shows the numbers behind how diversified marijuana product manufacturers are getting in terms of their product offerings, with most carrying a wide range of types like edibles, topicals, and concentrates instead of just focusing on one vertical category. This is a good one to open up for the full scan and read. Westword has a good piece up about the new business license type recently issued in Colorado that allows legal marijuana delivery and transportation companies more leeway in doing business. Previous to the issuing of the new license type, commercial marijuana had to be picked up from wholesalers and delivered to its destination within a 24-hour period. While that constraint wasn't a huge deal for dispensaries in cities like Denver and Boulder, for farther flung locations, it could have meant that some shops weren't always able to get fully restocked at the frequency they would have liked. The Westword's piece does a good job of laying out some of the reasonings for why the new delivery system will benefit shoppers in the form of more fully stocked shelves. Colorado state lawmakers have some work to do to fix a legislative typo that could, if not addressed, cost millions of dollars from marijuana sales tax to the state's transportation system and a number of Denver art, science, and cultural organizations and institutions. The mistake was made within a 59-page funding bill that diverts part of marijuana sales tax to the Colorado RTD transportation system and organizations like the Denver Zoo, the city's Museum of Nature and Science, and the Center for Performing Arts. The offending typo was the omission of the words, quote, special districts, which cut the funding connections to those districts. Lawmakers say they will attempt to fix the problem through the rulemaking process this summer, or barring that, as soon as possible once the new legislative session starts up early next year. Later this evening in Anchorage, Alaska, members of the city's assembly will meet to consider the idea of sending a resolution in support of public marijuana consumption to the state's Marijuana Control Board, which is mulling over the idea of allowing Alaska businesses to offer spaces to customers in which to consume marijuana. The Marijuana Control Board meets tomorrow, so any possible resolution from the Anchorage Assembly would land just ahead of deliberations. We'll report back on this later in the week. And finally for today, Tom Angel over at Massroots has a great piece up in which he clarifies the headlines Oregon has received in recent days over a proposed plan to remove the threat of felony charges for offenders caught with small amounts of drugs like cocaine, meth, and heroin. As headline writers are wont to do sometimes, they blew this story out of proportion a bit, with some stories saying the state was decriminalizing those drugs, which Tom helpfully points out is wrong. A better term is defelonization. This is a good one to click over for the full read. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily and visit our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, MJ Today Media, and to all of our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in, starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.